Hi, and welcome to our Enneagram Foundations podcast series, hosted by Rasanath and Hari Prasad, who have brought the Enneagram to countless individuals and organizations for more than a decade. In 14 episodes, we'll provide a strong foundation on the 9 types and the levels of consciousness. This series will bring the types alive for you, help you understand the suffering that each type experiences as a result of their ego fixations, and offer our personalized practice for each type to move towards their best self, free from the shackles of the ego.
Hey, Rasanath. We're here to speak about Type 5, which is a wonderful little journey to do justice to the 5s in the world and help us all really understand the importance of this particular personality type. So let's start with the essence qualities, as always.
Thank you. So the Type 5 is called the Investigator. And at the core, the Type 5, the essence of the Type 5 is clarity, illumination, and objectivity. 5s, from my experience, are very misunderstood in the Enneagram world. And I have also struggled with falling into the stereotype. And it's just learning so much more about the 5 that makes us recognize that the essence of the 5 is all about the excitement of curiosity. And we have all had experiences in our life when, we get it, right? At that moment, when I see in my daughter, who's 2 years old, there's something that I've been trying to teach her. And when she gets it, when she understands how something works, there's just this excitement about that experience. And at the core, that is what clarity is. When we have clarity, when we get it, there's something very alive, something very confidence building about knowing how I can keep my steps. And the 5 stands for that clarity and the excitement of that curiosity, that unending curiosity to find out how things are and bring that to the world.
Wonderful. So what is the basic fear?
So the basic fear, drawing from the essence qualities, the basic fear of the 5 is to feel ignorant, foolish. 5s also, our teacher Russ, who identifies himself as a 5, speaks so wonderfully about the basic fear. My place in the world, the 5's place in the world, is the bringing of knowledge. And that's what I live for, to understand, to explain, to create that clarity for the rest of humanity. And that's what knowledge is. We confuse many times knowledge with information. And so when we talk about knowledge, we might misidentify that with information, but knowledge has a certain depth and gravitas attached to it. It's understanding something so deeply. And I would say the resultant action that that depth of knowledge can bring about can affect the world very deeply. We see how scientific discoveries and inventions have done that. And we also see how knowledge about psychology has done that. We also see, on its highest, knowledge of spirituality has done that. So that's why the fear for the 5 is not having that clarity, feeling ignorant, feeling foolish, not being the knowledge bearer for the world.
Thank you. And so the basic desire, if we flip that around,
is to feel knowledgeable, is to feel encyclopedic, is how we describe it. It's just knowing everything. If possible, everything about everything, but at least everything about something. Mm-hmm. And then I have a place in the world, because that's what I would like to bring.
Yeah. So walk us through the levels of consciousness, and let's start with the creative.
At the creative levels of consciousness, 5s are scrutinizing and curious. They have this, and I explained this when we talked about the essence qualities. there is a childlike curiosity about the five. There is an innocence attached to it. I am just genuinely interested. And that interest may not necessarily have a goal. So to say, I'm not trying to manufacture something, or I'm not trying to build a business. I'm just genuinely, and some of us would like, well, what's the point then, right? But that's the beauty of the five. It's just knowledge for its knowing. And we miss so much because we have lost that spirit of curiosity in our own lives. It is pretty incredible to witness how some of the most simple things, dare I say, things that we take for granted in this world happens. You watch a flower bloom. You watch the different shades of a flower, and it's incredible to see how it works. These are very simple things. And then there are so many more things that are way more complex, like the human brain. And we have become a society that is so much focused on application and the results that we derive from application, that we have lost touch with the childlike curiosity about, well, how is something working?
In speaking the heart of the five, you're speaking my own heart. Even though I'm not a five, I relate so intensely to what you're expressing. And one example that comes to my mind along the lines of what you described is, so I'm staying at my wife's parents' home in Toronto for a couple of weeks, and my mother-in-law has a garden that she's tending to, and I saw zucchini grow for the first time in my life, and it blew my mind. I just couldn't believe that thing came from that plant, and that I got to see it happen, and I got to see it from nothing to something tiny that was like magically appearing to something great that is like hanging on the stem. And it was so mystifying to me. I kept thinking, my God, it was intoxicating, and I kept wanting to see more. I was snapping photos of it. I almost took a video, even though there's nothing really to video. I was just so enthralled. And that really is the experience of the five at the creative consciousness. It's that feeling of being enthralled.
Enthralled.
All around me. Look, there's so much wonder. There's so much wonder. We take it for granted. We don't even see it. We're blind to it.
It's sad, right? And when you think about how much we complain about a flight being late or the internet being slow, and it's understandable that there is frustration because we expect something to function in a certain way. But it also is a reminder for us about the complexity of things that we take so much for granted. If we were to ask the question to anyone, well, how does the internet work? Like, it's mind-blowing. There are so many things that have to work together in a particular way at a particular time in order for us to write an email, which we take so much for granted.
And the fives are so responsible for understanding how things work even before there's anything like that to work. They are able to discover and bring things into the world that did not exist prior, because they could understand the potential of how something could work if I invented it or if I discovered the technology, which is incredible.
And a lot of fives will also say this, that they didn't discover something because they were looking to invent something. They invented something because they were experimenting with what they were finding. And then it became something that was just so profound that was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And there is something so powerful about that kind of curiosity. And as you said, enthralled, exhilaration is the other word that comes to mind. When you're a witness to the magic of how things work.
I'm reminded of Albert Einstein. I mean, so many famous fives who've brought us, incredible insights, realizations, life-changing, world-changing understandings. And Einstein is one such five. And he would say, I'm doing this all because I want to understand the mind of God. I just want to understand, how did he bring all of this into being? What was he thinking? I want to be tracking and on page, amazing, so inspiring, And just the last thing I'll say on this in terms of how this relates to us and our stuckness, not being able to see that wonder. I was so refreshed by a coaching session I had that began with a founder who I was coaching a founder who's very, very successful, like wildly successful. And he took a moment to just show me the garden of where he was staying, very much like the garden we have here in Toronto. And he picked up on the fact that I was in awe of it. And I had just been in this mode from seeing the garden here. And he picked up on it. He was like, oh, let's look around. And then at the end of the call, he said, I'm so glad that I got to show you the garden. And for me, that was like, this very hard driving, results oriented, super productive, person who is just like, I'm so happy that I got to show you the garden where I'm staying, because it's really cool to see all of these things growing. Like, that's the 5 energy that we need.
So true. And I'm experiencing a little bit of that because of my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And the kind of curiosity and excitement that they have about discovery. And I feel like I have lost that in the course of my life. And I find it very extremely refreshing.
And it takes so much patience and sacrifice. Like, he was taking his time. There was no rush, even though we were in our coaching session and it's his time. There was no rush. And that's the 5 energy also, that patience to really diligently understand and be with things.
Thank you.
So take us into the controlling. How does this get off base with the ego?
So as with any type, when the ego becomes insecure about its place in the world, that doesn't get its validation. And in this case, for the 5, the validation is about being the knowledge bearer. And it happens many times because 5s, they're interested in so many different things. And sometimes the topics that they're interested are, many times the topics that they're interested are not topics that somebody else is interested in to talk about. It could be anything. It could be mushrooms. It could be aircrafts from World War II and how they were manufactured and their design. It could be anything. And the 5s, again, this can give us this feel like, oh my God, the 5s are obscure. No, they're not. I just think that a lot of the world doesn't have the time or the curiosity.
I love that stuff. I'm super fascinated by all that stuff.
To appreciate. I've heard so many people say, oh, history, that's just boring.
Oh my God, I love it.
I'm so interested in history.
Yeah.
And then even within history, there are certain parts of history that I'm not as interested in as certain other parts. But then there are people who are very interested in certain parts of history. That then, when I'm actually trying to communicate that to somebody else, as a 5, I am speaking very excitedly about a topic. And 5s are typically, they don't necessarily let themselves connect with other individuals in that way.
They necessarily convey the excitement that they may be feeling, and it may not be an exciting experience on the other end.
And this is so important to understand, both for the 5s and for other people, that the excitement of the 5s comes in the form of this rush of knowledge that may feel like information overload for the other person.
Vegetation also.
Right? And it's many times it's possible that because I have studied so much, that even for the 5, I've lost touch with the exhilaration of it. That I just become I have basically gathered information about something. And yes, I'm curious, but it's
mechanical.
It's mechanical. It's started to get dry for myself as well. And now when I'm reproducing that, other people feel like, oh my gosh, this is obscure. It has the feeling of being obscure. This person is not making a connection with me. And this person is just it's just downloading. And it's also a topic that I'm not really interested in. So the natural response, or I would say, if we know better the Enneagram and understand this about the 5, we might be more sensitive. But sometimes the natural response, and many times the insensitive response, can just be excuse me, I need to go somewhere else, right? And the 5, then feeling very disappointed and feeling like, oh my gosh, I probably came across as stupid, incomplete about my sharing of this topic. And so the fives internalize that as, well, I'm ignorant. And then I go back further into my world. I buy all the books that I need to buy about a specific topic, about mushrooms, because I didn't talk in a very educated way about it. And now when I come out and talk and lecture about this, the world will listen to it. And now it's starting to get the fives isolate themselves. I'm isolating myself now. I'm just spending a lot of my time in the books. And my mind is on an overdrive. And it's also experimental overdrive. I start to become very impractical with how I'm thinking about things. And a lot of fives at this level of consciousness have also talked about insomnia, where the mind is just thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking about very obscure things and putting things that are so disconnected together in its experimental drive that I just can't stop this.
For example?
So I can, and Russ, our teacher Russ, likes to, I'm quoting him directly because I feel it could be very personal. He talks about, well, what will happen if the Earth's axis tilts by 2.5 degrees? And how will the Earth's surface crack when that happens? And, the death around and people falling and, brains splattering on the walls. Like this kind of just unrestricted imagination.
Is that not destructive?
It is starting to get there. It's starting to get dark. But even at the higher levels of the controlling, the best way you can describe it is there is almost it's starting to move towards the mad scientist.
Being at the lower levels of controlling.
I would say not yet at the destructive, still
right.
in the medium to lower levels of controlling.
Yeah. That's the image that we give is the mad.
Yeah, it is starting to get it's starting to get a little crazy. Eccentric is the word that I would use at this levels of consciousness, and others experience that. And also the fives at this level are basically saying, well, the world will never get it anyways. And it's true. They are way ahead of their time in their discovery. But in the process, what they have also done is dismissed. They're not acknowledging their own feelings of disappointment. And because they don't acknowledge, they're so out of touch with their own feelings. Feelings are very foreign for the fives. They already have a relationship with feelings where feelings can come in the way of my curiosity and my objectivity to study something. So like the threes work, but differently motivated, the fives also put away their feelings. They don't necessarily fully understand feelings as well. It's foreign for them because of their orientation. And in the controlling levels of consciousness going down to the destructive, that just gets amped up even more, where I am not genuinely making a connection, a human connection, with myself or with anybody else.
We talked about with the four how feelings are not trustworthy. They're always fluctuating. The fives have that sense of feelings are not trustworthy. People are not trustworthy. I mean, people can come and go. They can be right. They can be wrong. They can do this. They can do that.
But information is.
Facts are trustworthy. I go towards facts. Yeah. And they can be extremely artistic. They're not only scientists, but it's like the approach is a certain way. It's based on knowledge and based on experimentation. And there's a process and a way in which I'm trying to, push the bounds on what we know.
That's right.
So what can we do then to get up the levels of consciousness again? I mean, it's very dark in the destructive. Do you want to just, say a word on that and then take us up?
The destructive levels of consciousness, it can become very, very dark for the fives. Fives, they withdraw from the world, just like the fours would. And the mind is on such a drive at the same time. Our teacher Russ likes to say that many times fives, because they just can't, the mind is just so much on a drive at this level of consciousness, the only way they feel they can stop it is basically by killing themselves. And the way they tend to do that is by blowing their brains out, because that's the only way they can actually stop this. Of course, that's the darkest that it gets to. But then there is also very dark, it can also be dark around, without the killing or suicide, it can also get dark, very dark experiments. There is an obsession with death, because that's the only thing that you can't really know what lies behind it.
So the practice
For the fives, it's very important to make a human connection. And that means getting to know our feelings and learning to make friendship with our own feelings. Again, fives pride themselves on being objective. But in the process, their knowledge, which can be so incredibly rewarding for the entire world, can't find an outlet, because the channel of giving knowledge is the human connection. And when they fail to make a human connection, the treasure house of knowledge and also their own sense of identity can't be realized. So the fives have to keep in mind to go that extra mile to make a genuine human connection before they can share their incredible wealth of knowledge. Try to connect with someone on a human way. Do not dismiss their interests. This is where it gets subconsciously, I just dismiss what other people are interested in to just share what I'm interested in. Just really try to find out more about other people. Fives are naturally curious. If you channel that curiosity with a heartfelt way of making that human connection, then you'll also find that your knowledge has a natural gateway to getting on the other side.
Yeah, connection means feelings. Like relationship means exchange of emotions. So if we don't have emotions that we are aware of or comfortable with, then we can't really do that. I was also just thinking, in closing, that there's such a difference between knowledge and knowledge which touches the heart.
That's right.
And when you feel the awe and you feel the enthralled experience of the creative five, and this is available for any of us, we all have that five energy in us, that potential. It is always touching the heart. Wow, there's something that it inspires in me deeply. I feel something.
That's right.
And when I divorce myself from that because it's uncomfortable or it feels untrustworthy, my feelings, then it's not very satisfying. And I certainly can't engage with other people in a fulfilling way. So just to underscore what you're saying, that really hit me in this conversation.
Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to also just, witness your own transformation in understanding, connecting with the five. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hari-Prasad.
Thank you for listening to this episode of our Enneagram Foundations podcast series. As a reminder, we have 3 programs coming up in the fall, including our Enneagram workshop on September 30th and October 1st. For more information about these workshops, to get in touch about an Upbuild workshop for your organization, or to get access to our free Enneagram resources on our website, please visit upbuild.com. We look forward to being with you again next time.